Still, there was no sleep for him. Faces lurked in the shadows, swirling up at him like faces obscured in snow, and when the wind blew an overhanging tree limb against the roof, he jumped. Jerusalem's lot. He closed his eyes and put his arm across them, and it all began to come back. He could almost see the glass paperweight, the kind that will make a tiny blizzard when you shake it. Salem's lot. Welcome back to Archer's World of Literature, guys. Today we're going to be continuing the spooky season with 1975 Stephen King, Salem's Lot. So, this is Stephen King's second published work, and going through the publication order of Into the Multiverse, Stephen King's interconnected world of books. This is Salem's Lot. Now, Salem's Lot follows the town of Jerusalem's Lot, which is sort of abbreviated by the locals as Salem's Lot. Now, strange things are happening in this town, but not unlike any other small town in Maine. The odd disappearance or a crime, things like that. Not too unheard of in small towns, but things start getting worse and worse. Now, the Marston House is essentially a historical house that's located on a hill in the town of Jerusalem, Jerusalem's Lot. And so in the Marston House, there was a horrible accident that happened many years ago where the previous owner, Marston, and he actually shot his wife and he committed suicide in the house. Now, the protagonist, Ben Mears, as a child, he was dared to get into one of the local youth gangs or something like that. He was actually dared to go inside the Marston House, the abandoned house, and take something and come back to them holding a thing from the house. He just had to go inside because it was a haunted house, right? And so he goes in and he actually takes something, and then he decides to go back in because he wants to prove that he can go in a second time or whatnot. And he goes in and he goes upstairs into the bedroom and he sees Mr. Marston hanging from the roofs by a noose. And that has sort of plagued his nightmares and his life for the rest of his life. Now, growing up, Ben Mears is an author, and so he's a published author, and he decides to come back to Jerusalem's Lot to focus on writing a new book. And so the people around him don't know what it's about, but we know that his book is severely focused on the Marston House and the strange things that have been happening in Jerusalem's Lot. So Ben ends up meeting Susan. So Susan Norton is one of the local girls, and she actually approaches him saying that she's a fan of his work and things like that. And they end up striking up this really nice relationship. And, basically, long story short, this book is, they start to realize that these strange happenings that are going on, the entire town is slowly starting to disappear and everyone's starting to fall off the face of the town. And they start realizing that this is all happening after the arrival of Mr. Straker and his mysterious partner, Mr. Barlow. Now, Straker and Mr. Barlow open up a secondhand furniture shop in Jerusalem's Lot, and they're, from the get-go, you can kind of tell that they're sort of some devious characters. So one of the first things that happens in this book that makes you go, oh, something's happening in this town, some odd things are happening, is a dead dog is found by one of the grave diggers, hanging upside down, like bleeding. It's got its throat slit, something like that. It's hanging upside down from the gates of the graveyard. And so the grave digger's doing his normal job. He's filling in a grave after some boys have disappeared, and one of the boys has actually died. So it isn't until people start disappearing one by one from the face of this town that we end up getting together our main group of characters, the vampire hunters, if you will. Now, they consist of Ben Mears, who's sort of the primary character of this, Jimmy Cody, who's the local doctor, accompanied by Mark Petrie, who is a local schoolboy. And then they're actually also accompanied by Father Callahan. Now, Father Callahan, if you know, you know. I haven't read too much of Stephen King's work, but I am aware. Father Callahan is one of Stephen King's more notable characters that sort of pops his way in and out of Stephen King's works throughout the multiverse. Now, this group of vampire hunters, if you will, they start realizing what's going on. You know, this is sort of after Mark Petrie is visited by one of the kids that's believed to be dead. He's visited by him at his house, and he being, this kid who's a fan of horror, and he loves collecting horror figurines and things like that. He's aware of the tales of vampires, and there's a lot of references to Bram Stoker's Dracula and previous myths of vampires. So he starts realizing what's going on, and essentially Straker and Barlow, the people who set up this furniture shop, they're not what they seem. So Straker is essentially working for Barlow, Barlow's the main vampire, and Straker is, I think he's a human. I'm not entirely sure. I think Straker's a human who does the dirty work for Barlow and brings him, live victims for him to turn into vampires. Because he bites them and then they become vampires, and all of a sudden everyone in the town's a vampire. Now, I can't spoil the end, obviously, but it all comes to a climax. People keep disappearing, and it ends up between this final battle between this team of characters against Barlow and the vampires and Straker. And this book is it's about 680 pages long, and it's so easy to fly through. I said this in my Carrie review. This is my second Stephen King book, and the way he writes is you just fly through the pages. It's his dialogue, his prose is so incredible. Now, moving on to the actual spooky side of this book, this is actually pretty terrifying. There was parts when I was reading it and my heart started thumping. Right, so that's kind of how I could tell it was scary. My heart was actually going oh my God, this is happening. And I think part of that is because he's so good at writing the characters and making you feel for these characters that your heart's kind of thumping for the scariness of what's going on, but it's also thumping because you care about these characters. For those who have read Bram Stoker's Dracula, one of my favorite books of all time, the ending of this, because Stephen King's ability to jump back and forth in time periods is just seamless. It's so cool. It's amazing. The ending of this, the last chapter, or last couple of chapters, is literally is a love letter to Bram Stoker's Dracula, a complete homage. It just he's jumping back to 1850. Jerusalem's lot in 1850, because obviously this book is set in the 1950s or 60s. So this was Stephen King's 1975 Salem's Lot. Now, I would love it if you guys told me if you've read this before. Tell me what you've thought about it. Let me know anything I missed, because it's a big book. You're going to miss some things. If you want to read it, hype it up in the comments. Tell everyone what your thoughts are. Put down your favorite Stephen King book down below as well. I'm getting to them in publication order, but if you guys can hype up any, make me even more excited to keep getting through to that. My upcoming TBR doesn't have as much Stephen King in it at the moment, because one of those books includes James Joyce's Ulysses, so that's going to be a big chunk, probably a month of reading just that. He's not, I don't have any more of his books, in the upcoming month and a half, but as soon as that, that challenge is done, I cannot wait to keep going with Into the Multiverse. So, thank you so much for watching, as always, it means so much. Stay reading, peace out.